you doing? I was going through some old papers, and I came across this bulletin from the North Syracuse Christian Church, dated September 6, 2015, where our pastor, Monte Smith, in his weekly little devotional column that he puts on the inside of the bulletins, or his thoughts, usually relevant to whatever it is he's preaching that week, or something that's going on in current events. It's usually just a short, a few paragraphs that he puts down his perspective on something, and he does a really good job. And if you go to the North Syracuse Christian Church Facebook page, onto the notes, there's got to be 3 or 4 years worth of notes on there, and with just a few exceptions, they're all Monte's notes. This one here he wrote, I found it interesting, is about the North Syracuse Christian Church. And I'm going to read what he wrote, and maybe you find it interesting. From Monte Smith. Probably, if you're like me, when you tell somebody about our church, they often ask, what kind of church is it? For many people, this question is kind of like asking, like going out to eat at a new restaurant, or wanting to know what kind of food they serve, Italian, Chinese, Mexican, etc. They want to see if they're in the mood for that type of cuisine. The same is true when people ask about North Syracuse Christian Church. They want to see if the flavor of the church they like, if it's the flavor of the church they like, before they commit to saying yes to your invitation. Historically, people like to put labels on things. It helps them organize them in their minds. And that's true of Christianity as well. Labels represent some theological history, usually related to biblical interpretation. You have some major labels that separate Christendom, like Catholic and Protestant, that created huge divisions in the church around an event called the Reformation, a movement largely started by Martin Luther. Then you have a smaller subdivisions within each of those that have given many denominational labels, such as Baptist, Lutheran, Methodist, Episcopalian, Anglican, and so on. And then, of course, you have people, because people like the labeling process, they have given nuanced names that separate even those groups into smaller groups. So then you have the free will Baptists as opposed to the faith-only Baptists, and you have the charismatics battling it out with the born-agains, and on and on. A brief stroll through church section of your yellow pages will demonstrate how confusing it is. Years ago, I was doing some construction work for a Baptist lady in my hometown, and she indignantly asked me, "Why do you call yourselves the Christian Church? Aren't we all Christians?" And my answer to that is, then why don't we just call ourselves Christians? For some people, it just seems too simplistic to say, "I'm a Christian." They want to know what brand of Christian you are. They seem to need to be more. They seem to need it to be more complicated than it is. North Syracuse Christian Church is historically part of the Back to the Bible movement that some call the Restoration movement, where some Christians came to believe that it wasn't any more complicated than that. They wanted to restore the simplicity of the Christian faith that had become watered down and man-made traditions and doctrines. They wanted to be able to say, no name but Christian, no book but the Bible, no creed but Christ. What kind of church is North Syracuse Christian Church? We are Christians. We are followers of Jesus Christ, and that's enough, because He is enough. Love always, Monte Smith. I couldn't agree more, and it's one of the things that really attracted me to North Syracuse Christian Church when I first started going there a long time ago, over 20 years now, that I've been going to that church, and the people that go to that church are family to me. One of the great things about North Syracuse Christian Church is, I would say, it's like it's religion light. And Monte preaches the Word of God with compassion and with love, but without compromise and without apology. So the word, if you're anybody who's seeking the truth and is willing to change their lives to conform to that of the will of God, and you have questions and you want to know what is the will of God for man, for the church, for you, by all means, especially when we get back to normal. It's 10:30 on Sunday mornings at the North Syracuse Christian Church, 911 Church Street, North Syracuse, New York. Everyone is welcome, just like everyone is welcome to come and follow Christ, if you're willing to do so. And one of the things that I think that is even before this pandemic, even before all of this was going on, one thing that all of us, regardless of what we believe, regardless of whether we are Christians or atheists or somewhere in between, we all see that the world is not right. We all see that things are not the way they're supposed to be. And we all identify the same problems. We see the breakdown of the family, we see the breakdown of society, we see the corruption in our government, we see the failures of our cultures, okay? And we see the division and the disunity and the animosity that we seem to have for one another. And we all want the same thing. We all want unity, and we all want peace. And the thing is, we just differ on how we get there from where we are. And I think that the secular world mostly struggles for answers. They recognize the problems and they want to manage the problems, mostly by managing people with a lot of laws and regulations. And I don't think you can do that. You can't legislate morality, and you can't you can't legislate people to behave correctly. I think that's one of the things the Founding Fathers were talking about when they said that the Constitution, it was John Adams who said the Constitution is for a moral and religious people, and it's not adequate for any other people, because if you don't have people that will police themselves, then the government will police you. And so when you complain about our rights being infringed on and our beliefs and our foundation of our republic eroding, maybe you should look inward instead of looking at your neighbor. And if we start policing ourselves, then maybe we can fix this thing. And I think that the answer to all that is Jesus, because we can manage people's behavior, but it all comes down to one thing, and that's the sin. Everything in our society that is problematic is the result of sin, whether it is the sin of greed, the sin of power, the sin of lust, whatever the problems in our society, the selfishness, it's all based on sin. And the answer to sin is Jesus Christ. So no matter what you think is wrong with the world, and no matter how you think it should be managed, I think that you should give Jesus a thought and give Jesus a look, and come check us out at North Syracuse Christian Church and see what God has to say on these issues and see if it strikes a chord. I believe it will. And if you watch this and you're not really in an area where you can reasonably make it to North Syracuse Christian Church, if you live too far away or even out of state, then inbox me or send me a message, and I'll look up. I'm pretty familiar with other churches in the area, in Rochester and Binghamton, and even as far away as Buffalo and other places. We have sister churches that we work hand in hand with that also are good Bible-believing, simply Christian churches. And so if you need to find a church, let me know, and I'll help you find a church. But if you're around here, come to North Syracuse Christian Church. You can check us out on Facebook, North Syracuse Christian Church. You can, over the last couple weeks, you can see Monte's sermons and listen to what he has to say and get a feel for the church, see what we do there. All right, thanks. Take care. God bless, and hope to see you at church. All right, bye.